The ability to elevate yourself and, as one of our CEOs put it, rise above the clutter. CEOs must have the ability to very quickly have a change of lens.
It is with great pleasure and excitement I'm going to introduce you, Michael Smets, who is going to give us a speech about some of his recent work, the CEO report that has been only probably introduced at the latest World Economic Forum in Davos in January. So this is actually the first time since that time this is presented to a broader audience. Michael is an associate professor at Said Business School, and you're running tailor-suited also top management programs, working with, of course, leadership, motivation, complexity within organizations, and is, of course, very research-based as well. Michael focuses both on making some really rigorous theoretical work into his research, but also making sure that it has a lot of practical use to come out of whatever is being done. So Michael, I think it's time for you. Thank you.
Thank you very much for those very, very kind words. Thank you to the CFL for inviting me. And there I clearly have to declare that obviously this is not my work. It's the work of a large research team. I've just been the lucky one who was picked to go to Copenhagen on a lovely spring day and enjoy the sunshine. And with that, I also have to extend very great thanks to you here and those watching from afar in Jutland that you've chosen to come here tonight. I am competing, I am aware, with a sunny evening outside. I've just been informed with the Champions League quarterfinal and the main course, so no pressure at all. As Belinda said, what I'm going to share with you is the CEO report, which was launched at the World Economic Forum in Davos through a panel hosted by Matthew Bishop of The Economist. It included Eileen Gordon of Ingredion, Arne Sorensen of Marriott, and Klaus Kleinfeld of Alcoa, to give you some sense of the caliber of people that we spoke to in this study. In total, we interviewed over 150 CEOs over the past year. Collectively, they have 880 years of experience as chief executives with an average tenure of 6.5 years. They collectively sign responsible for 5.8 million employees and $1.6 trillion of revenues. So it is a fairly illustrious sample that we interviewed. The report is distinctive in a number of dimensions. It's comprehensive in the way that it is not yet another one of those leadership surveys that focuses on the Western world. The sample, in a relatively balanced fashion, covers North America, Europe, but also the Middle East, Asia Pacific, Africa, Latin America, to give us a global impression of how CEOs lead and how CEOs attain the competence to lead in the current business environment. It also covers a very broad range of industries, from life sciences through industrial manufacturing to consumer goods and professional services. Also, in contrast to some other CEO surveys you may have seen out in the business press, it is a personal interview. So 95% of those conversations we conducted face-to-face in the room with the CEO, the others via video conference or telephone. So it's a very intimate setting in which we could explore and discuss the challenges of leadership today in a very intimate and open fashion, because we had this amount of time, but also, and especially, because we assured CEOs of their absolute anonymity. And it was quite remarkable to what extent CEOs were able and willing to open up and very candidly discuss the challenges and struggles that they go through in their day-to-day work, and that allowed us to discover concepts such as the power of doubt, which is the headline act, so to speak, for tonight, which I will get to in a moment. How do we unearth those trends when they jump borders? So we look at Travis Kalanick, CEO of Uber, recently awarded the Boldness Award of the Financial Times for the boldest disruptor in the business world. While you may think about Uber what you may, and there are certainly enough things to dislike, but there is a very clear perceptiveness about Travis in the sense that he understood the intersection of urbanization, the need for mobility, the growth of the sharing economy, and the increasing affinity to mobile technology and managing your life through apps. And that is a critical skill which we have nicknamed ripple intelligence. It's basically the capacity to understand and anticipate how, when, and why big trends interact. So think about ripples like ripples on a lake when someone throws in a pebble. And that is actually one of the explanations why it feels that our world is changing so much faster than we think ever before. There are simply more people throwing more pebbles, some of them even big rocks into that pond, and some of those ripples interact and crash onto the shores of your organization in a big tsunami. So the question is, how do we develop that ripple intelligence so you anticipate when that is going to happen? One of the quantitative tasks we set our CEOs was we sent them a list of the top 10 global trends that the World Economic Forum released last year and says, please rate on a scale from 1 to 5 which you anticipate to be the biggest challenge to your organization in the next 3 to 5 years. And as you can see, across all the regions of the world, only European CEOs and North American CEOs agree on the fact that cyber threats are the biggest challenge. Everybody else has a different priority, and I can tell you the number 2 and number 3 are different as well. So all the different regions throw different pebbles into that rock, into that pond. It's not like we're all trying to adjust to the same perception of a complex and volatile world, but we're all acting according to our own regional perceptions or our own sectoral perceptions. So everybody throws different pebbles, different rocks, and those ripples start to interact, and that is why ripple intelligence, anticipating how, why, and when they interact, is so critical. The critical feature in thinking about this is the ability to elevate yourself and, as one of our CEOs put it, rise above the clutter. CEOs must have the ability to very quickly have a change of lens. Zoom in and out quickly, and with this put themselves in the right place with the right attitude. So if you get stuck in the day-to-day business, the day-to-day operations of your organizations, you're almost at sea level. So as with the obsession with the pace of change, that biggest, most imminent ripple is going to look the largest, the most important, and it's blocking your view of the others. It's very difficult to discern the rest. So the critical skill is to elevate yourself, zoom out, get this view from the balcony, and actually perceive with some distance how these different ripples interact. Now, critically, that does not mean that you should completely divorce yourself from the day-to-day operations, because that is needed to be agile enough in terms of strategy, but it is, as shown in the quote, the ability to zoom in, zoom out, and adjust accordingly. And that is one of the big challenges CEOs face in terms of, again, making those choices between right and right. It is perfectly reasonable to stay close to your operations. It is perfectly reasonable to remove yourself and take this macro-level view on the trends as they unfold. The challenge is making the right choice in the right moment to put you into the right place and frame of mind. Now, the beautiful thing of these interviews is that some of these CEOs give us some beautifully simple and evocative examples of how they actually do that on a day-to-day basis. And still, one of my favorite quotes and anecdotes from this study is actually a Scandinavian CEO who said, "I set aside 30 minutes each day to read news that I don't care about." So he says, the one thing we do with customized news feeds, with following our interests, is we put these huge cognitive blinkers. We only get news that are relevant today. And we limit our peripheral vision, and we become desensitized to other things that might be relevant tomorrow. You limit yourself from perceiving how there is a trend out there that is not relevant today, but if that starts to connect to one of the other trends you're perceiving at the moment, that is going to come crashing on your shores. So, for example, spoke to a CEO from the US hospitality industry and says, well, Of course, Ebola is a very localized crisis at the moment. But really, it affects travel worldwide because people don't get onto planes because they are afraid of infection. So even though that looks very remote, that trend is directly relevant for us as well. So some CEOs are more sensitive to looking around the corner, perceiving what is going on kind of 1, 2, 3 chess moves away in that way. And that is really the critical skill of Ripple intelligence. And there is another way, and you can also do this in more formalized ways, and in a way that not just focuses on the trends that are coming towards you, but also the ripples you are sending out. So one of them says, I'm not so focused on the decision I make. I try to anticipate the second bounce of the ball, not the first bounce where I make the decision, but where does it go next? Because you make a decision and there are follow-on repercussions, sometimes those issues can be as big as the first one you dealt with. So Ripple intelligence works in both ways, preparing for your decision and dealing with the aftermath of your decision. You can do this in these beautifully, seemingly trivial ways of just reading broadly for 30 minutes a day, or in broader, more systematic network analysis, for example. This is another study done by a different department at Oxford University together with Zurich Insurance. I'm not expecting you to read all the detail, but it's basically about the question, what is the likelihood and the potential impact of global risks that are currently out there? So in the top right corner, high impact, high likelihood, interstate conflict, water crises, spread of infectious diseases, failure of climate change, adaptation. Now, individually, they're all very big challenges for humanity. They become even more daunting when you apply Ripple intelligence and you start to understand and to model how these trends are likely to interact in the future, and you get some very, very big hitters like profound social instability that is fed by both the rising income disparity and the increasing polarization of societies. So that's an example of how you use Ripple intelligence in a more systematic, resource-intensive way, but as the previous example showed, it works at a very small personal level as well and has very profound impacts straight away. So Ripple intelligence allows you connect the dots, again, anticipate the big challenges that might come to your door, and buy yourself time to deal with those.